Welcome back, everyone. My name is Nikki Check, and in studio I have Cindy Ferris joining me today to discuss with you or share information with you. I'm going to read it. The month of May is Tuberous Sclerosis Awareness Month in Canada, and it would be the 15th of May globally. Welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Cindy reached out to me and asked if we could just jump on a live stream and talk. So Cindy, can you share with the listeners what this is?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tuberous sclerosis was first, founded or came about in 1880 by a doctor by the name of Dr. Bournesville. So that was the initial name of it, and it eventually changed to tuberous sclerosis and then tuberous sclerosis complex.
Okay. And what are is it a diagnosis that is it debilitating? Can you live with it? What are the signs? How detrimental or how?
Sure. Okay, so tuberous sclerosis can affect people in many different ways. So it is chromosome 9 and 16. I know that's a little bit technical, but it's important to just know that for those people who have tuberous sclerosis. Oftentimes it can go undiagnosed for many, many years if there's no symptoms of it. Sometimes people can be diagnosed with it post-mortem. Actually, they might have died from lung disease or kidney failure or something like that. So people can live with this disease and never know they have it. But that being said, it can also affect the loved ones of those who have tuberous sclerosis. So 50% of those who are born from a parent who has tuberous sclerosis can then pass it on and pass it on, pass it on. In many cases, though, it is mutated on its own. Yeah.
So it is genetic, or
it can be genetic.
Can be.
So it can mutate on its own, but if a person already has it, then there's a 50% chance of it being passed on. Yeah.
So Cindy, what are some of the symptoms?
Sure. So oftentimes when a child is diagnosed with it, it's because there is something that comes about that that gives reason for it to be diagnosed. So for example, if a child is having a seizure, they'll go to the doctor. The doctor may diagnose it as epilepsy, but there will be oftentimes an underlying condition, and oftentimes it's tuberous sclerosis. So it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, but oftentimes through seizures. And if there's seizures, then there can be developmental delays, intellectual disabilities, behavioral issues, autism. So people who have autism with this disease, so over 49% to 65% of individuals who have autism with this, people who have autism and have this disease, over 49% will have the autism if they've been diagnosed with this condition. So I suspect there's probably many people in this community who have autism that have not yet been diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis because there may not be other manifestations of the disease that have presented itself. So if a person is like a child, for example, they end up going to the hospital, they don't know what it is, it's epilepsy. If they are referred to a pediatrician, oftentimes a pediatrician may find something else underneath that, and it can be tuberous sclerosis. So again, manifests itself through seizures, behavioral problems, autism, and also a significant sign is what they call birthmarking or ash leaf spots. So they're like white spots that form on the skin, anywhere on the skin, that look like the shape of an ash leaf. And so they will detect this through genetics, and they'll put a woods lamp, like a lamp over one's body in the dark, and they'll be able to see the white spots.
Amazing, Cindy, that people can have this condition and not know it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an organization? So someone gets diagnosed with this. Is there a local not-for-profit? Is there funding?
Sure.
Is there volunteerism? Is there doing it?
I'll share with you a little bit more about the disease.
Okay.
So with tuberous sclerosis, like I said, it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways, but I would just like to just bring your imagination around to a potato, for example.
Okay.
So you've got a potato and you've got little nodules on the potato. This is an example of what can go on in the brain. So in the brain, it can start with a little nodule. So they're tumors is what they are. They're benign tumors that form, and they can multiply in the brain, okay? So then also in the organs, the heart, the liver, the lungs, the kidneys can all be affected by this disease. Now, one can live a normal, fairly healthy life and expect to live a normal lifespan with this condition as well. However, if any of these tumors block various parts of the body, it can affect
Sure.
in any way, and therefore can be life-limiting if it's affecting other organs where something then has to happen.
So my very, very topical research on this, Cindy, says there is not a cure.
There is no cure.
But are there preventative things that we can do that can slow the progress of these benign tumors? Or if they it sounds like they metastasize, they spread.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some way we can slow them?
I don't know that they can be slowed down, but they can be treated. Individuals can be treated with various medications for the various things that go on in the body. So for example, if an individual is having seizures, then they treat the seizures with anti-seizure medication, for example. If it's the lungs or the kidneys or something else, there may be, these are the facts that some people have to have these things removed, but they'll often do surgery to help overcome whatever's going on. Okay, so if I can just go back to your question about help and resources and that kind of thing. So the organization Tuberous Sclerosis Canada was formed in July of 1990. I'm a founding member of that organization. So this year we're celebrating 35 years of this organization. I have been with this organization from the start and continue to be a support to families in BC. Can I tell you a little story?
Please.
Okay, so I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but I have a daughter, who has tuberous sclerosis. She was diagnosed at the age of 7.5 months. She was born a healthy 10-pound, 1-ounce baby girl, big baby girl, APGAR score, perfect. Would have never thought anything was the matter. She was my third child. And when she was 7.5 months old, she went into a comatose-like state. And I didn't know what was the matter. Took her to the doctor. The doctor didn't know what was the matter. It didn't look like a seizure, but it was a seizure. And so she seized for 2 days. And my husband was out of town at the time. He came home, and I told him to take her to the hospital to get her checked because she just was so lethargic. She had a temperature. And so he took her to Surrey Memorial. We were living on the coast at the time. So he took her in, and no word of a lie, the feeling that one gets when you've come to learn that your child is seriously ill to the point of possibly losing their life, when you don't imagine that that's even something that could possibly be. But the doctor had phoned me when she was admitted. They bypassed emerge. They took her right up, started running tests on her for meningitis and that kind of thing. The doctor phoned me and said, Mrs. Ferris, you need to get to the hospital right away. Honestly, I just remember collapsing. I had one of those phones that hang on the wall back in the day, in the 80s. And I just remember collapsing to the floor and just sobbing and sobbing. And the doctor, I could hear her saying, Mrs. Ferris, are you there? Are you there? It was awful. Anyway, that led us into a world of the unknowns, the what ifs and the unknowns. And so for a week, she stayed at Surrey Hospital, and they ran lots of tests. And then she went to Royal Columbian Hospital, and then from there they took her to Children's Hospital. Well, I do remember this, and I know it sounds absurd even, but they had my baby girl, 7.5 months old, in a stretcher. There were 2 paramedics wheeling the bed down the 3rd floor of the neurology of Children's Hospital. And what I saw all around me was not anything I'd ever seen before in my life. Children in the hallways, children spazzing, children.
Oh my gosh.
It was just so foreign to me. And I actually stopped the nurse. There was a nurse walking beside me, and I stopped her, put my arm on her, and I said, I think we've come to the wrong place. And honestly, it was the start of a whole new world to me. And anyway, we came to learn that she had tuberous sclerosis. She had these seizures that just would not stop. She was seizuring up to 150 times a day. It was just crazy. And Children's Hospital, being a teaching hospital, would bring in all of these doctors to look at her, because it is a rare condition. It affects 1 in 6,000 to 1 in 10,000. So if we have a population of, 180,000 here in the central Okanagan, that I would presume that there's got to be anywhere between 18 to 30 people living in this community. I've only ever known of 2. Okay. I am the contact person for tuberous sclerosis in the province of BC. It's just a good thing that I live here, because we have a great supportive community, lots of resources here in this community, lots of resources in the Vancouver area for sure, absolutely. What would have happened, what's happening now versus 30 years ago, is that we have clinics in Canada. And so I think there's one in Alberta, Quebec, Ontario, 3 primary areas where we have clinics. So a clinic is where individuals, children, go on a certain day when other families go. So all of the families go on one day to see the neurologist, the urologist, the nephrologist, whatever it is that they're needing. Yeah.
Incredible. Is there, you started.
So what happened initially, when my daughter was at Children's Hospital, I didn't know anything about it. Obviously, the neurologist knew about it. That's where it's going to be diagnosed, is when a neurologist certainly is involved, because they are the ones that it's kind of like a funnel, a triage. They come through a neurologist. The neurologist sees all these individuals that have tuberous sclerosis. Family doctors often will never, ever recognize it, because you think about it, 1 in 6,000 children will be diagnosed with this condition. Is a doctor going to see 6,000 patients over their lifetime in their career? Not likely. No. So they will often refer them somewhere else. So a pediatrician will then become more likely, and then obviously a neurologist would be the next likely. So when my daughter was diagnosed, they had a library, UBC library at Children's Hospital. So when my daughter was sleeping, I would go down to the library and sift through books and information, and that was before the time of computers.
Yeah.
And all I found was a little paragraph in a medical journal about the Bournesville disease. And there was a 1-800 number in this medical journal.
Medical journal.
So Maryland, West Virginia. So I called that number. My daughter had a tumor in her heart, and I was concerned that somehow it was going to affect her in some way and possibly death. And that was a very scary time. So I called that number. They became my lifeline. So that organization was National Tuberous Sclerosis Association, NTSA, which is now the TSC Alliance, still stationed in Maryland.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they supported me for many months after. I could just call them and I would have someone, and it was usually the same person on the other end of the line, coaching me and telling me what was happening. And then eventually they asked me to come on board with them as a volunteer, as a state rep. They called me a state rep because they didn't have any other representatives in Canada. And so at first I said, no, I don't want to do that, because I was afraid, right? Fear holds us back from doing a lot of things in our life. Anyway, eventually I said yes, and so I became a state rep for them. I went to various medical symposiums around the U.S., wherever they were holding them. I would fly there and learn as much as I could about this, and then started to do some media around BC. I found 47 families in BC, and so that was way back in 1990 to 1992, somewhere in there, 1988 to 1992. Found many families. We held support groups in Vancouver on a monthly basis. We brought in various speakers, a really solid group of people in the Vancouver area. Then I moved to Kelowna in 1991 and still continue to support families elsewhere. And to this day, I still continue to do that. If a family needs help, I'm with them on the phone every step of the way. And we'll also provide TS Canada as a resource as well, because they are the holder of all of the information. So anyway, with NTSA in the US, they connected me to 2 other moms in Canada, one in Alberta, one in New Brunswick. And so the 3 of us talked on the phone. There was no internet. We talked on the phone often and started to form our own national organization. So this is 35 years this year, as I mentioned, that this organization has been around.
So much there to unpack, Cindy, and I think the first thing and so much to say. The first thing I want to say is I can't even imagine, as a mother of 3, a grandma of 1, I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine what you went through, how scary it was, how so many questions and, like, for all intents and purposes, no answers and nowhere to get the answers. Like you close your eyes and you see that medical journal in the library with a 1-800 number, and that was a lifeline, the lifeline for you. Yeah. So Cindy, thank you so much for taking on the role of being there for others, to help them navigate when the diagnosis is.
It's a really scary world when a parent is faced with an unknown, whether their child will live or die, and how it might affect them through their life. So when we were told about our daughter, her name is Shayla. She's a beautiful 36-year-old young woman. She is my world. She is so precious. But I remember distinctly the doctor sitting on the edge of the table, actually, and my husband and I were hearing the news for the first time. And my concern was, first of all, whether she was going to live, whether she will ever walk or talk, whether she will have some form of a normal life. And the response at that time was, I don't know. We just don't know. And so through her life, there has been so many unanswered questions. At the same time, little guidance in terms of every individual is different. Their story is different. How they're affected is different. So what can happen with one may not happen with another. So for my child, everything that she had started to learn by 7.5 months old, and you wouldn't think there'd be a lot, but there's usually babbling and sounds and mama, dada, like words like this, learning to crawl. She lost all that. She went right back and reverted to newborn state. And it wasn't for a couple of more years after that did we start to see some of the development that she had started to develop at 7 months old start to come back later, those milestones. So even learning to walk. And we figured that she also had a stroke in that time. So her body atrophied on one side, and she was not able to use her right arm and her right leg. And so learning to walk, learning to crawl, learning to do all those things again were hard for her. She essentially started to learn to speak through music therapies. We had lots of different therapies: speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, music therapy, anything to help her gain the skills that she needed back in those days. And it's so critical for these young ones to get what they need at the very beginning of their life when they're first affected. So for her, it took many years, so starting to speak at the age of 6, and then essentially going into a grand mal seizure at the age of 11 and losing a lot of what she gained up until that point. So numbers, alphabet, colors, her address, mom and dad's name, like all of those simple kinds of questions that kids know. She lost it all, and she's never been able to gain it since. So today she's just a beautiful young woman. What I had dreamed for her in her life wasn't getting married. It wasn't buying her own home. It wasn't, the things that we typically would want for our children. What I hoped for her now, because of the changes in her and her development, was that she'd be happy and healthy and safe. So she has caregivers that work with her and live with her. And so here we are today in a place of, I am so grateful for the life that she's had. And I wouldn't have thought way back then that I would ever be grateful. I was demolished is the word that comes to my mind. I was so afraid for her future, a lot of fear around that, and what would happen to her, and what's going to happen as I get older, and who's going to look after her when I can't. So here we are now. She's living with her best friend in a condo, a 3-bedroom condo that her best friend's parents purchased. And they invited Shayla to live with their daughter. And then we have a company that has come on board through CLBC. CLBC gives a grant to this company to provide 24/7 care to our girls. And we are still, as parents, involved in their life, but others are now looking after them. So that will be 4 years in May that has been in place. And the quality of my daughter's life is superb. So when I say that, she's healthy, she's happy, she's safe.
Yeah.
And she has a boyfriend. She does have a boyfriend, believe it or not. And I would never have thought ever that would ever have happened. She's been with him now for 8 years. They were smitten with each other right from the get-go. He is very much like her. He has autism, but he doesn't have tuberous sclerosis. He doesn't live in this community, so we go and visit them. They come and visit us. But he certainly pulls at our heartstrings, and we can see that. So she's
Oh,
living a very fulfilling life that's full. She attends Parkinson Rec Center, goes to cooking and crafts and exercise and music, dance every Friday night. She's got a circle of friends around her and fantastic caregivers. So she has a good life.
Cindy, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
So if
Tad emotional.
So I just want to say, if there's people living here in this community, whether you're a caregiver, a parent, an individual with tuberous sclerosis, please reach out to me. I have a website, Mindful Empowerment Coaching.
Okay.
It's Mindful Empowerment Coaching. Reach out to me, send me an email, and I would love to have a conversation with you on the phone. And would be happy to send you information and lead you to the right resources that are right for you. So.
Cindy, thank you for all you do in this community and for all you do in this diagnosis, and for the road you've traveled and the strength that you have undoubtedly needed to lean on often.
Don't start crying.
Oh, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks.